19-year-old André slowly got out of bed. It was necessary to get ready for an unloved job. He simply hated the French restaurant where he worked as a waiter without much enthusiasm. An errand boy, as he called himself. But for lack of education, except for school, he could not find a job other than as a waiter. André didn't serve in the army either. Purposefully mowed down a non-existent flat foot, bought from a surgeon. Then he promised his mother that he would go to university and get an education better than spending a year in the army for nothing. But he never did, as the strict mother reminded him at every opportunity. Having collected himself listlessly and had breakfast with cocoa sandwiches, a gloomy André went to work. He did not like minibuses and therefore preferred to rent an electric scooter. In their small town, this miracle of technology was brought quite recently, and immediately convenient and easy to handle transport quickly gained a certain kind of popularity. Both in a good and in a bad way. There were marginals who prevented progress by any available means, and then innocent equipment was broken, thrown off the bridge, or simply thrown into garbage containers. But, thank God, there were not many such clinical idiots. After working a rather boring and ordinary shift, André headed home. This time the transport attracted his attention with an interesting detail. The entire left handlebar handle was covered with numerous cuts and scratches. "We could have replaced the rubber," the young man muttered under his breath, and unblocked the electric scooter, and then switching the toggle switch to gas, headed home. The next morning he had to hurry to his shift again. But the day started with surprises. First of all, by some miracle he got the same scooter again. He was easily recognizable by the characteristic scratches. And secondly, the rent has already been paid in advance. But how is this even possible? After all, the program is individual. Although what's the difference? A freebie, and okay, the guy thought. Today André was exhausted beyond endurance. Then some duck took out the brain for 2 hours with the stages of frying steaks. Then the partner, instead of working, all the time solved her love problems with another boyfriend by phone. Well, at the end of the day, like the cherry on the cake, he broke 3 wine glasses. I had to pay for the dishes and for the swill. Well, nothing. A refreshing ride on an electric scooter through the night city will cheer him up. Once I got the same 2-wheel transport. And the second time someone paid. André's mood lifted. Although it was a little alarming. But as they say, for free and vinegar is sweet. The cool wind gently ruffled her hair. The multicolored lights of the night city shone alluringly. And the few drivers did not interfere with the dashing maneuvers. The mood rose even more, but also, André was filled with some hitherto incomprehensible feeling. He couldn't describe it exactly. But it's like he's not alone. Or maybe it was just overwork. Arriving home, André went to bed without even having dinner. In a dream, André saw himself alone with a beautiful black-haired girl. She seemed vaguely familiar to him. But he couldn't remember where he had seen her. They walked for a long time through the night and unfamiliar city. And in this mysterious city there was no one but them. And when André decided to kiss a stranger, a romantic dream turned into a nightmare. Their lips passionately merged in a love rush, but suddenly it smelled strongly of something salty and like some kind of dust. Like road dust. André recoiled from the girl and saw red blood gushing thickly from her mouth. No longer such an attractive brunette with disheveled dirty hair, smiled with bloody lips and slowly walked towards him, stretching out her wounded hands, while instead of the left hand, a red stump with protruding bones was frighteningly pulsating. Screaming, André woke up, but the taste of blood did not leave. The young man jumped up sharply, rushed into the bath, and, looking in the mirror, exhaled with relief. The damn bad tooth bled again in his sleep. You already need to earn some money and go to the dentist. It is not an option to turn to the mother for help. She already reproaches with a military ticket bought with her money at every opportunity. Today André had to go to a medical college. He wanted to know about the admission conditions. He will be trained as a paramedic so that his mother will fall behind, and then it will be seen further. Maybe he'll go to the tower. When he left the house, this time he was not even surprised, neither the same scooter, nor the advance payment of rent. But now a new detail has been added, a note. André unfolded a crumpled piece of paper and grunted in surprise. I agree. I will always be there for you. And instead of a dot, a neatly drawn red heart. Did the guy have a secret admirer? Very interesting. While Andre was driving to the educational institution, he could have sworn that he saw the same girl from the dream a couple of times. Not clearly and directly, but with peripheral vision in the reflection of shop windows. Just for a split second, but I saw it. And not in that beautiful image, but in an image torn and stained with blood. It was as if she was riding from behind, hugging him around the waist. And the feeling of someone else's presence has only intensified today. To calm himself, he referred to a nightmare. Moreover, if something like this really happened, then others would see it. But it wasn't. It's all overwork and a nightmare playing bad jokes with his mind, the guy thought. Having delighted his mother with the fact that he would enter medical school, Andre spent the rest of the day at the computer. And again, a romantic dream abruptly turned into a nightmare. This time, they were walking with a lovely stranger in a deserted park at night. And they talked about something for a long time. Andre understood one thing: the dialogues were about love. Later, in an unknown way, as often happens in dreams, they found themselves on the roadway of the night avenue. It was raining fine and dreary. Everything was so obvious that Andre even felt his clothes getting wet. And when once again, the girl told him about love, the night silence was cut by a deafening car signal. And then a blow, a bright blinding light, and a dark blue Honda breaks the girl into 1,000 porcelain bleeding fragments. Andre's gaze shifted to a strange black object that seemed familiar to him. Again, a bright flash of headlights and the light picked out a fallen electric scooter from the darkness, with a badly cut left handlebar handle. But Andre was still holding something in his right hand. The guy slowly lowered his gaze. His palm tightly clutched a bleeding fragile porcelain brush. Andre woke up screaming again. Somehow recovering from another nightmare, the guy decided that he would go to work today on an unloved minibus. It's time to take a break from the scooter. The campaign from the hated restaurant and worries about the upcoming studies. Andrew so wound himself up that he saw in his dreams all sorts of fantastic nonsense. The day turned out to be as difficult as ever. A wonderful blend of squabbles with colleagues, stupid chefs, and extremely inadequate guests. Besides, everything was falling out of his hands today. And again -2 wine glasses and a branded plate. We need to get out of the catering urgently. Very tired and wanting at least something to cheer himself up, he decided to go back neither by taxi, but on the usual scooter. And when he was met at the parking lot by an already familiar device, invitingly winking with blue lights, Andre was not a bit surprised. I was also not surprised by the payment made in advance. Having promised himself that this was the last ride on it, the guy stood on the soundboard and switched the toggle switch to the gas position. And again, this feeling of someone else's presence has intensified more than ever. And soon thunder rolled deftly and a fine rain began to fall. Just like in the last dream. Several times, it seemed to the guy that someone invisible was hugging him around the waist. But that's all nonsense. It's just wet clothes sticking. And he was just tired. So the brain is playing dumb jokes with him, the guy consoled himself. Although the drive to the house was no more than 20 minutes, Andre began to feel very sleepy. Several times it even seemed to him that he had fallen asleep. But instead of stopping and walking, he decided to get there faster. And then the scooter stopped obeying him. At first, the steering wheel began to lead from side to side, and then when the young man wanted to slow down, the toggle switch jammed. He didn't go down. And after a second, a transparent female hand appeared from behind and added gas. And someone's soft voice whispered in my ear, "I will always be there." Andre couldn't even scream with fright. A moment later, the steering wheel turned sharply and the electric scooter was carried out into the oncoming traffic lane. Another moment and Andre flies into a dark blue Honda car at full speed. The last thing he saw before he lost consciousness was a smiling girl with disheveled black hair in a white dress stained with red. She raised her left hand and waved a greeting with a pulsating blood stump, with terrifying bare bones. Andre came to himself already in the hospital and the first thing he saw was a beige, not bleached for a long time, ceiling. And the first one I heard was my mother. He didn't want to call her mother anymore. Too rude. At the time of the accident, Andrei had already said goodbye to life. In a second he realized everything, and first of all how right mother was, especially in the matter of education. As soon as his mother noticed his coming to consciousness, the words came out of the woman like a fountain, some of which, namely the first ones, Andrei did not hear at all. Can you imagine? Can you imagine, right? Just a hair's breadth from death. Andriashenka, if Anatoly Mikhailich wasn't a resuscitator, then you wouldn't be alive at all. Where did you drive so hard? You were just picked up by the bones for a couple of days. But don't be scared. Everything is fine now. Well, if you don't count broken both legs and severe craniocerebral. But there is no threat. Everything will be fine. Thanks to the doctors. They literally pulled you out of the grave, happily, the woman babbled, sometimes wiping tears with the back of her hand. Well, you can forget about admission this year. You'll go in the next one. And then it's definitely on the medical. To save people too. Like Viktor Vasilievich, and the woman, smiling for a moment, looked at the stern, plump surgeon in glasses. But Andrew, I'll tell you this. It's just mysticism, some kind. Straight, damn it. On that scooter you crashed on. Another girl crashed before you. A year younger. And also flew into the car. And the strangest thing. Exactly the same one. So there was such a horror. Her left hand was already torn off. Caught between the steering wheel and the asphalt. So she's doing great too. Can you imagine riding this stuff in a white dress? So her poor girl was so unwound that she died before the ambulance arrived. And the most mystical thing is that the very driver who was driving told me this. You just bumped into him. I think I've already said that. I asked myself a question and immediately stopped. Oh. I'm not telling you what you need to know at all. In your condition. Sorry at this moment, the stern doctor hinted, chuckled. Oh. Okay. The doctors told you not to bother much. In general, my son, I ran. I also need to go to the pharmacy, and then to work. How good that everything turned out, and the woman, kissing her son on the forehead, hurriedly left, and the doctor left with her. Then the delighted Elizaveta Vassilievna did not pay attention to how cold her son was from fear. And the guy remembered this. A year ago, Andrei and the guys went to the scene of an accident at night, where that very young student died. Then he was drunk, cut circles around a sad photo with a beautiful brunette, and knocked down the wreath several times. On the remark of friends, he assured with bravado that she was not offended and began to offer the deceased girl a ride. Then everyone called him a real idiot. The company soon lost interest in Andrei's drunken antics, and went home. But as it turned out, the deceased accepted the offer. Andrei wearily turned his gaze to the bedside table and noticed a small note among the many goodies. Somehow reaching out, he unfolded the paper, and again a wave of horror engulfed him, leaving cold drops on his forehead. I will always be there, he mouthed silently. And a damn heart instead of a dot. And then a cry of horror stuck in his throat with a huge crushing lump. Andrei saw her. Not as usual in reflection, in a dream or in delirium. He saw her head at the foot of his bed. She smiled and scarlet blood, reeking of corpse stench, flowed thickly down her dead cornflower lips.